Call the meeting to order and ask the clerk for the roll.
Magistrate Elkins.
Present.
Davis.
Present.
Blanton.
Here.
Graham.
Present.
Thompson.
Here.
And Constantopoulos is out.
Item number 5 is adoption of the agenda. I do have a note regarding item number 6. That should read amend/reconsider approval of the minutes from the May 28th, 2020 fiscal court meeting. So strike regarding item number 9. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item number 6, amend/reconsider approval of the minutes from the May 28th, 2020 fiscal court meeting. We neglected to include in those minutes the approval of the bid from Palmer Engineering regarding the US 60 project. Do I have a motion to include that in those minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Where will that go?
Michelle, is there a place it would be more convenient for that to be at the end, perhaps?
They don't have to write.
At the end.
So just before, just after Boonesboro Bridge,
That work?
Yes.
before
Yes.
adjourn, okay.
Well, it'll be corrected in today's minutes.
Okay, but that's where it would have
To go
been.
back,
But that's where it
yes.
would have been.
Correct.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
Judge, I have one question. About 3/4 of the way down on the page 2 of those minutes, it looks like there were 2 motions made to approve the first reading of the budget.
Okay.
Probably we should strike one of those, and just after, I would think you would strike the second one, and then after where it says motion made by Magistrate Constantopoulos, seconded by Magistrate Davis to amend the aforesaid motion with changes, and then all magistrates voted yea. I think you'd want something like, after the amendment, the court voted on the motion on the floor, or something of that nature. Makes sense.
It's about as clear as mud. You think you
Yeah.
could restate that?
Yeah, there are 2 sentences that says motion made by Magistrate Elkins, seconded by Magistrate Constantopoulos to approve the first reading of the ordinance, and so on. That is stated twice. I think probably the second one you should strike the second one and include the words, the court took up the motion on the floor, or something of that nature.
So strike the second motion made by Magistrate Elkins, seconded by Magistrate Constantopoulos to approve the first reading of ordinance 2020-03, approving the Clark County Fiscal Court budget for fiscal year 2021, and replace with?
I just put a voted yea on the amended motion.
Yeah, could do that.
Just,
yeah.
just add that right there.
Just strike
After
it.
the vote, it says all magistrates and judge voted yea on the amended motion.
On the amended motion, and that's the very next line after
Yeah,
the
that
struck.
way you don't have to add much to it.
That would fix it, and I apologize, I didn't catch that till last night, so it's too late to bring that to your attention before today.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 7, consider approval of the minutes from the June 10th, 2020 fiscal court meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Again, the second paragraph on the second page is incorrect. Had that discussion at the last meeting. There was no motion to approve an order.
There,
Second paragraph on the second page, which reads,
We had no
motion made
order.
by Magistrate Blanton, seconded by Magistrate Constantopoulos to approve Order 2020-56, requesting the City of Winchester to manage the accounting for Parks and Recreation Department as requested by the Winchester Clark County Parks and Recreation Board. My recollection is, I don't recall Robert saying that he was requesting an order. He made a motion. Now, County Attorney Elkins, you prepared an order for the convenience of the court, is that correct?
I did. I think you'll recall that was a Zoom meeting, so, you know, in a moment different in time than what we would experience normally. That motion and approval was made here in the courtroom. You know, I think if you look at the minutes, we concluded the meeting about 10:49 in the morning. If you check the work and the email on the order, I emailed that to Deputy Judge Townsend at 10:18 a.m. in the morning. So it was done simultaneously during the fiscal court meeting. I don't disagree that as a textual matter that whatever the words were in the court that day there was no awareness of what the number to the order would be. The statute says that the court is to commit all its official acts to its record. That could mean any number of things. I looked for, first of all, I was doing nothing but being helpful and exercising my best intellect and legal experience. But after it was questioned, I looked into the matter, and the statute says that you commit all your official acts to the record. There is no Supreme Court interpretation or any Attorney General interpretation to what that means. The subsection 1 speaks about your minutes, so we're not talking about minutes, we're talking about something beyond that. So I think that the order is lawful. It may be a separate issue from these minutes, but either way, I think the minutes, if they said exactly what Magistrate Blanton moved that day, and were approved in that form, and the order was also left in place or ratified, I think either of those things all work. I think the court speaks through its records. It speaks here on video. It commits those transactions to a set of minutes. When we reduce those to a written order, all that does is give more background and clarity to a public who's used to seeing an order when we do work. So,
Judge, if I might, I'd add this to it, the 39-minute mark, and I went back and watched that meeting because of the, not just the question, but the way it was raised in the last meeting. At the 39-minute mark, Matt Belcher said that he didn't need a vote on that issue, but at the 40-minute mark, Magistrate Blanton suggested, and I quote, "Maybe we should have something for the files and know what is going on so we can keep it in the file and have a paper record of it," unquote. To which Mr. Lewis said, "I think that would be a good idea, Magistrate Blanton. Just simply so we all know moving forward, if we retire, end up in hopefully Hawaii," unquote, "people can go back and look back and see what happened, what took place." A comment was made by Magistrate Belcher that it certainly was your call, Judge. Mr. Lewis said he would like to have something, information to take back to his board, and he said, quote, "either A, they agreed, or they were opposed," unquote. Magistrate Blanton then said, quote, "I'll move that we concur with the City Commission. The city will do the financials for the Winchester-Clark County Parks and Recreation Board," unquote, which was seconded by Magistrate Constantopoulos, and then Magistrate Blanton further added that no additional cost would be incurred by the Parks Board or the county. And then after some discussion, we had a unanimous vote. So there was no question that day that there was a desire to have a written record of that motion. So I think the minutes are good the way they stand.
Well, I would move that we amend those minutes to the words to strike the language and order 2020-56 requesting the city to manage the accounting for the Parks and Recreation as requested by the Winchester-Clark County Parks and Recreation Board, to say that to concur with the city of Winchester in having to do the financials for the Winchester-Clark County Parks and Recreation Board. And if we need to do an order, put it on the next agenda. Because I didn't say that. Don't argue with Mr. Elkins, but the minutes speak for themselves, and I didn't say that, and I don't want people putting words in my mouth. And I did not say that. And Mr. Elkins was present, and he didn't say we needed an order that night. So if he's having second thoughts, then we can bring it up a second time.
there's no second thoughts on my part, and I don't think you need to bring it up a second time. I don't disagree that there was no thought at the time what the number of the order might be.
But the minutes need to reflect what happened.
I didn't interrupt you when you were talking.
Yeah.
But the minutes aren't intended to be a verbatim recital of what goes on in this courtroom, but to reflect the work for historical purposes and preservation so that people can know what we did. And I think the minutes as is accomplish that.
Well, I would expect you would say that.
I'll second that motion.
A motion has been made and seconded to,
Who's my first one? Oh, never mind.
I made a motion to
Robert.
amend them.
has been made and seconded to strike order 2020-56 from these minutes. I think basically what we need to decide as a court, and I think we've thus far been silent on the issue, is whether or not we find it convenient to have orders reflecting these sometimes spur of the moment magistrate comment, resolutions, and other things that come up. In the grand scheme of things, when you look at the fact that we're currently doing a codification of ordinances so that we can have an easily identifiable record, if you ever have looked through the records in the clerk's office, it's a heck of a lot easier to find an order or an ordinance than it is to go through the minutes of every meeting and find a note in the minutes. So I think for the convenience of the public, it's certainly in the best interest to record these things as orders. And I don't see where we've had a policy one way or the other. Now, maybe that's something we need to address in the administrative code. I don't know. But it doesn't offend me that we have an order, as long as it accurately reflects the meeting.
Judge, I don't argue with an order if we need an order, but it wasn't on the agenda, it wasn't considered that night. All I'm asking is to put it on the agenda and let us vote on it like we should. The second part of that is, it may need to be a joint order since it involves the Winchester Clark County Planning Commission, which is a joint agency. I'm not so sure that if we approve this order, it might not need to be a joint order. So, but, you know, and I won't argue with an order, but it needs to be done the proper way. We can't go back and change what happened. You just can't do that. We did not approve an order. Do you remember approving an order that night? That morning?
An order was not
Does
requested.
anybody in the room remember us approving an order that
Well,
day?
Judge, I think that's kind of a,
No,
all due
it's-
respect, I think that's sort of a specious position to take.
No,
And
it's not.
For the following reason, this court routinely, for many years, has had its county attorneys prepare orders, or the county attorney has taken it upon himself to prepare an order after a vote was taken. Usually, as Judge, as you pointed out, it's something that's decided on the fly. It's voted on in magistrate's comments. It's something that the judge brings to the floor, and the judge has, and then the county attorney has in turn prepared an order, really for the sake of the court and the benefit of the public more than anything else. It's really one more task that the county attorney takes upon himself. Now, my understanding, Judge, and Mr. Elkins may correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's been the standard operating procedure for years.
No.
So for the county attorney to prepare an order or amend an order after the fact so that we have something in the record, I think it's important, Judge, that when the court takes a vote on an issue, that we memorialize it. Number one, we memorialize it in writing, and usually not just in the minutes, because as you pointed out very appropriately, going through potentially dozens or hundreds of pages of minutes to try to find a position that the court took on something in a formal vote, and that was a vote. And quite frankly, when we took the vote, I just assumed and anticipated that there'd be an order to follow. So that's been done, I think, many times. If that's not the case, then I've been of the wrong impression for a long time. But I think previous courts, including this one, has had orders prepared after the fact, and I think the public benefits from it. I think transparency benefits from it. So I don't see any reason to amend the minutes. If we want to draft the minutes or have the clerk draft the minutes differently later on, that's fine. But I appreciate the fact that we have orders that follow the actions of this court. I think it's helpful. So.
Well, let me say you're wrong. When we approve an order, we say order, we direct somebody to do an order. We don't vote on one thing and the minutes reflect something else. The minutes are supposed to reflect accurately what occurred at that meeting. These minutes do not accurately reflect what occurred at that meeting.
Has everyone had an opportunity to review the order in question? Everyone? I'm going to make a motion to amend Robert's motion that we approve the minutes, including a ratification of the order number 2020-56.
I'm not sure what your motion is.
My motion is to ratify Order 2020-56 and amend the minutes thus, and approve.
The order's going around. They haven't seen it.
So you want to change what occurred, you want to, not to change today's.
We're
minute.
ratifying. That's what we're doing, Robert. That seems to me that satisfies everyone's purposes. We have the order before us. I think we can act on it.
So what will the minutes say?
The minutes will say a motion was made by Magistrate Blanton, seconded by Magistrate Constantopoulos, requesting the City of Winchester to manage the accounting for Parks and Recreation Department as requested by the Winchester-Clark County Parks and Recreation Board. Order number 2020-56, ratified to this effect.
That's still,
I've looked at this order. It perfectly, I think perfectly memorializes what was actually requested in the meeting, that we have a written record, and I quote, we should have something for the files, so we know what, let's see, we should have something for the files and what's going on, so we can keep it in the file and have a paper record. Well, that's exactly what this is. So minutes are fine the way they are. We should approve them and move on. Should have moved on 15 minutes ago.
The minutes aren't what we did in that meeting, and I think it's important that we correct that, although I have no problem with the order whatsoever, and I would entertain a vote to approve the order right here and now, but I think we need to make the minutes reflect what happened in the meeting, and they don't do that.
Well, do I have a second to my motion or not? I guess is my question.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Joe. So discussion on that point, reflecting back to what Travis just said, I think it would be an important point to discuss if, for instance, this order said to save the cost approximately $50,000, which would not be accurate. Or if it said the Winchester-Clark County Parks and Recreation Board will allow XYZ tax firm. But this order, as Magistrate Elkins said, accurately reflects what was requested from Parks and Rec in the meeting. It accurately reflects what was voted on. What we're really doing is parsing hairs over a technicality, which is something we tend to do a lot. But I believe my motion cures it for everyone.
well, actually, the city manager said 20,000 is what the city manager said. If you want to split hairs again, he actually said 20,000, if you look at the tape. But if we can't do our job and do it accurately, we don't need to be doing it at all.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment that I offered, please respond by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
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 That seems,
Here's my nose.
I'm a no.
I'm a no.
so I think we have 3-3.
I think you have
So
4
that
to 3.
does not pass, right?
I think you have 4 to 3,
Okay.
or 4 to 2.
4-2.
4-2, well, still doesn't pass.
Right.
So going back to the original motion to change the minutes, motion made by Magistrate Blanton, seconded by Magistrate Constantopoulos to approve Order 2020-56, requesting the City of Winchester to manage the accounting for Parks and Recreation Department as requested by the Winchester-Clark County Parks and Recreation Board. The request was made in the motion to strike Order 2020-56.
That was the request to amend the motion, right? The order. The minutes, I'm sorry.
Any further discussion of that?
Did it get a second?
Magistrate
Yes.
Thompson seconded that. Okay, seeing no further discussion, let's have a roll call vote.
Magistrate Elkins?
No.
Davis?
No.
Magistrate Blanton?
Yes.
Magistrate Thompson?
Yes.
Measure Graham
No.
and Judge.
No.
4-2. Fails.
Now back to the motion to approve the minutes. Was that made and seconded?
Mm-hmm.
It was.
Elkins and Davis.
Wilkins and Davis, yes.
Any further discussion of that? Okay, seeing none, let's have a roll call vote.
Asher Davis,
Aye.
Blanton,
No.
Thompson,
No.
Graham,
Yes.
Elkins,
Yes.
and Judge.
Did you skip Davis?
Oh, no, that.
He started with Davis.
Oh, he was, okay,
You're the last one.
gotcha. Yes.
4-2 carries.
So now moving on. Item number 8, consider approval of the minutes from the June 25th, 2020 fiscal court meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Top of the second page. First two paragraphs, you've got order 2020-56.1C. I think that should be 10C. And underneath that, it should be 10D instead of just C and D.
We can put that in there.
We'll accept that as a friendly amendment. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item number 9, consider approval of the minutes from the June 30th, 2020 special called fiscal court meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Item number 10, do we have a public comment sheet? Oh. Teresa Bridges of Clintonville Road.
Good morning.
Morning, Tricia.
Teresa Bridges with 899 Clintonville Road. I'm here this morning for a new issue, for me anyway. The Greater Clark Foundation recently came to my attention. And it came to my attention because we've had this pandemic and they've been having wraparound phone calls every Monday and every Thursday with all of our public officials, or a lot of our public officials, sometimes our mayor, sometimes our judge, our disaster emergency services person. And they're all being led by a lady that I don't know and I did not elect. No offense, she's a wonderful lady. She's done a great job pulling things together. But as I began to look at the Greater Clark Foundation and what their purpose was and where their money came from our community. It was a non-profit community hospital. And so when you go back and pull the records, I've asked everyone. I've asked my judge. I've asked the former judge. I've asked the mayor. I've called Joellen Reed. I've called as many people as I can find, except I cannot find the people that are on the list as the directors. I've even put a call into Jen Alger, I think is her name, about a month ago and asked for a phone conversation regarding this, because once I talked to the Secretary of State's office and the Attorney General's office, they let me know that they're a quasi-government agency because of where the money came from originally. So my question is I've sent you a letter, Judge. I've talked to a few people. Why am I the one looking into this? Why am I looking for the $36 million that's still public assets, or it appears to be? I've done a little bit further work. There should be some sort of memorandum. There should be some sort of resolution. It's very interesting that you talked about orders this morning. There should have been an order from this court or something from the city commission. I can't imagine that you have, I believe at one point it was almost $50 million in assets, and no one, and it's public assets according to the newspaper article where Ed Mastering quoted that it's basically public assets, that no one seems to know why we don't get to know about these public assets. And I've listened in this court for several years, and I've heard you say, well, go to the Greater Clark Foundation. I didn't know what it was. I started looking. The last year that I have of their 990 PF, which is a private foundation, which is a big question that I have, is how did public assets get to be a private foundation? And the public doesn't get to know anything about it. I sent an email to Brett Chevron, and he told me it was private money. So I sent him this article. And supposedly I have a phone conversation with this lady at 1 o'clock on the 13th. But I think it's odd that no one in our community knows how this money came to be and how it came to be in the hands of someone that is not from our community. They did a nationwide search. Judge, this lady makes over twice what you do. So I think it's odd that someone that's for our health and that we don't get to know about the money. I even went to the PVA's office and I pulled a bunch of records because I was very curious as to what they still did own. There's still about 20 properties that are listed under the Greater Clark Foundation. Now, if those are public assets, are these people property managers? Is that what we put them there for? At some point, if they're not a public charity any longer, that should revert to the county. Or the county and the city at least should have some access to that money the way I see it. I could be entirely wrong, but since I can't get any answers, I have to come to them myself. So I'm curious if this court can help find that out. You know, can I even ask, can we do a grant? Can we make a grant ourselves that's for public health? It would be so timely to put a sewer in. I think public health concerns sewers, concerns waters and infrastructure. And so as I've looked at their financials, the ones that I have access to, it appears they sold something around $2.4 million. So the assets are coming down yearly from what I see. We have several employees. The directors don't make any money, but the employees that are there, it looks like to about a $2.5 million, which they may all be wonderful people. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, can we afford that in the current fiscal situation where we're laying off deputies, we're laying people off, we know we're going to have a budget shortfall? Why hasn't someone at least looked at this besides me? And that's what I'm asking you to do as a fiscal court. I think that's your job. And, you know, we're quibbling about orders and so forth. Yes, there should be an order. I've been to the clerk's office. I've looked through the 2011, the 2012, 2013 records, looking for an order, looking for something in the minutes. I just can't imagine that it can be public assets and somebody goes, okay, you guys can keep it, because that's what it appears. You know, I won't say that that's what happened, but that is what it appears. And when I contact these people to try to get those documents and cannot get them, and it takes a month to get a phone conversation, that puts even greater questions in my mind. Because when I look at the year that I have, of the $36 million, it looks like about $79,000 were given to our community, with about 30 of that going to the Leeds Theater Center for the Arts, which I don't necessarily have any problem with that, but you have another $120,000 in that year going to some investment company in Oregon. Why isn't that done with somebody here in Kentucky or in Winchester? It's because we have gone and done a nationwide search for someone to handle our money, and this fiscal court should be able to do that for free. It should not be costing us $500,000 or $3 million, or someone that you don't even know who is handling the property maintenance. I don't see where these people have any property maintenance expertise. I'm curious. I haven't driven behind the hospital to see what those buildings look like, or on Virginia Avenue or down Bond Haven to see what the properties that they have look like. But I'm very concerned because we're going to have a shortfall, and this is a statement, but it's also a question. And I will never just give someone a statement to give me before, because it made me look like a total whack job, Greg. My question to you all is what you're going to do about this. And I really expect an answer, because it's $36 million, and that's what they had 2 years ago. I don't know what they have now, but if you go and read the records of the Secretary of State, anytime someone indemnifies themselves to that amount, I have to question. You know, if you're a public servant, why are you indemnifying yourself against so many different things? And someone needs to read those documents that's concerned with that amount of money that could be being used somehow in our community. You know, and that's my biggest question, is how did something go from being a $36 million or however much money it is, public assets, to a private foundation? And we don't get any say in it. And because I've heard you all say, we've sent the Salvation Army there, we've sent this person there, we've sent that person there. How do you get the money? And why is it that someone that is not from here is directing those things? So, Judge, can you answer my question? Or can you get me an answer?
Well, I can't specifically answer your question because I wasn't involved whenever that was formed. I can tell you, and this is mere hearsay, I have always heard it was private money through a private endowment.
Right.
Were
But
you able to speak with Mr. Mastrian about that at all?
I have not, but I will. I just was curious what this court knew, because since it's public assets, since that's what the newspaper article says, and Ed Mastrian himself quoted it, he said, this is public assets since it came from public money. Evidently, we donated. I'm not saying that all of it is, but it should be separated. If there are public assets in there, they should be separated from their private donations, and you should know what they have. And you should know what the public assets are, because that's what you guys do. Is that not what your job is to control the money for our community? So I'm asking you, I see this money out here, and no one can say how it got to be a private entity. And how someone can make twice as much as my county judge that I voted for. I didn't vote for this person. And how someone can lead our community when we have disaster emergency services and we have a public health officer at the health department. How those people got in that control. Just because you have a lot of money or control a lot of money should not mean that you get to control our health. That was what was alarming to me. I heard the lady talk about, well, what does that look like in 2 months? Do we require people to wear masks? Do we need to lock up the parks now? And I'm thinking, who are you? I don't know who you are. You're not appointed, you're not elected, you're not paid by my county, but you're directing our entire county's health effort. And that's what I heard. So I would so appreciate it if you could do something to take control of that. The foundation itself, the money itself, I'm concerned about our public assets going down if you have someone in charge of it that is not used to maintaining property. You know? So, I mean, I think that's very important right now, and an order is very important, that you do an order after you vote on something in this court. After you vote on it, it's very important that it gets listed, because I had to look through those. And even though there's an order, they're not the best, you know, but at least you can find it versus going back and having to read through the minutes. So I think an order, whether you vote on it, whether you don't, it's very important that something memorializes what happened, because if something had memorialized it, I would have been able to find it. And I've even called Mitch McConnell's office today, because he was involved in a May 16th meeting in 2011 concerning all this. So I'm thinking maybe he has some records. There's got to be some records somewhere of what happened and how it happened. And we should have either a permanent record in our office if it was something to do with the community foundation. I even talked to Liz Ellswick in the clerk's office to see what she recalled, you know, because those things happened. There has to be a record of it. And I appreciate anything you can do, because I think our community is going to need this money.
William, did you have something to add there?
I did. I just had just a couple of thoughts I wanted to share with Ms. Bridges. I know that she's been working on this for some time. Sometimes it's hard to get to the answer unless we formulate our question properly. And as inarticulate as you've seen me be in this room, you know, I'm not proclaiming that I'm the expert in articulation, but I think to get a good answer, you have to have a good question. And I think the question here begins with, who owns the money? If it's, as Judge has suggested, private money, then this court has no work to do. If it's, as you've suggested through your research, public money, then perhaps the court has some work to do. So I think the first question is, who actually owns the money? And I think it's fair to say when we're talking about $36 million, no one's going to tolerate any assumptions. There's going to have to be some background. On that point, I think most people would agree that as a government, you can't have $36 million in the bank and have a sewer system out at US 60 or athletic parks for children. A lot of things are done without, if that's truly public money and not being used for public purpose. To get to the answer to the question, who owns it, I think that there has to be some controlling instrument. And I know you've been looking for it. I hear that in what you're saying. That says that under these conditions, this basically what I think were sales proceeds from the old Clark County Hospital, are gonna be transferred to Greater Clark Foundation under these charitable circumstances. And so I think if you're able to find the document sometime, and I think there is one, how you find it, I'm not sure, because I don't know where those things are kept. If it was in our order book, as you suggested, we get to it pretty quick. But there's going to be some provisions there about how Greater Clark must use the money, you know, that sort of thing. And then there's a statute out there that says that if that agreement's not being kept, then the public could demand the money back. And I think we could all imagine the dimension of the lawsuit that would be involved, over $36 million, where the lawyers undoubtedly will run off with a right smart piece of it by the time it's over. But I think there's a lot of value to the questions you ask, but I just wanted to try to focus the lens here to the real question: who owes the money? And the instrument you're looking for is the only place you're going to find the answer. If Ed Mastrian told you it's this way or that way, it would still only be what he thinks. The instrument has got to be in hand at some point in time.
Thank you. I appreciate that explanation, but I'm still hoping we can dig into that and someone can actually find out. I'm still looking, and I just think it's odd that it took me a month to get a phone conversation. If it was private money, they would probably tell me to go away. It's none of my business. So there has to be a reason I'm getting at least a phone conversation, and if there were documents, which I've requested, I would have received them, because that would have also made me go away. So I'm just very curious, and I'm curious why you all are more curious. It's $36 million, and I think it could help our community if any of it does belong to us. And if it doesn't, it was the community hospital. I would think that at some point that our city or our county could apply for a grant the same way anyone else could. And I've asked that question as well, because, you know, we need the money. We could use it for our sewers and to develop our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item number 11, accept fiscal year 2020 treasurer's settlement. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion?
I have some, Judge.
Sure.
Just some questions. On the revenue side, I noticed that the property tax was down a little from last year. Is that accurate, or?
Treasurer Champ, is there any reason why the property tax would be inaccurate? I assume it's accurate.
On the occupational license, it was up quite a bit from last year. Just was curious how that came about. And then on the city payroll tax sharing, it was down significantly from 307, 312 to 145, 910. Almost half.
Any particular reasoning?
I bought the checks the way they should be deposited by the line items.
Okay.
That's on payroll tax?
The city
there was a
payroll
question
tax,
about
what we
city
share with the city.
payroll.
Well, I mean,
tax.
my thought, just conjecture, Judge, would be, the pandemic shutdown started in early
That
to
doesn't,
mid.
that doesn't come in till this month. That quarter doesn't come in till this month.
But this is, you talking about for the fiscal year or for just this last quarter?
For the treasurer's report for June 30, 2020. I think the quarter that we were in the pandemic wouldn't come in till this month, so we wouldn't even know those numbers until later this month.
I think you'll see some of those things, and unfortunately, I think we'll see it drop off even more this year. Some of those agreements time out after 5 years, I believe.
And that's why I'm asking the question. There may be I'm curious.
Well, I'm on that committee, I guess, Revenue Sharing Committee, and it seems like I remember, Magistrate Thompson, there was something with the new school or something that dropped off after
That's
5
right.
years.
That's
There was
right.
some revenue that we lost, so that.
So
that-
potentially we met that
Those are
deadline.
dropping off. Those are dropping off.
Right, and I think we'll have more drop off around the hospital, the new hospital.
We'll end up with zero eventually,
That's
unless we do a
correct.
new order.
Yep, that'll continue to drop to nothing. Hopefully over the next several years and not quickly, but yeah, it's coming.
I got you. On the special project net profit, there was a $60,333. Does that represent our 60%? That correct me if I'm wrong, Judge, but that was the company that we hired to go out and collect some of the net profits that we weren't collecting.
I believe that was that
And-
company.
And we were to get 60% and they were to get 40 in
I
the first
don't
year.
remember the exact terms of the contract, but we were supposed to get a certain percentage of what they collected. They were gonna get a contingency fee of some sort.
My question to you was, is that 60,000 represent our 60% or our percentage of that money, if I'm wrong on the percentage?
I imagine it represents what they sent us to deposit, and I assume that their accounting is accurate.
Okay. How can we go about getting that paperwork and verifying that?
I suppose it's all public record. You can ask I guess you could ask the treasurer.
Okay, I'll do that. Then on the funds, I just ran some numbers. I didn't get to go through it to the extent that I wanted to because I didn't get it till late Monday night. But it appears we have $966,721 in uncommitted cash going into this fiscal year, 2021. I just wanted to point that out, that if you look at the budgets, we've got $966,721 in uncommitted cash. We reduced our cash balance in the general and special fund by a negative $274,057 in fiscal year 2020. We had a positive increase in the road fund of $286,384. We reduced the jail fund by a negative $21,317. And then we had a net overall current major fund of the four major funds. We reduced them $8,990. And I just wanted to point that out to the court and the public. If anybody has any questions on those
What
numbers.
was that reduction number again?
The total?
Total.
$8,990.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I see where you're at.
That's all I got, Judge.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that motion carries. Item number 12, consider approval of the transfers. Do I have a motion?
A motion for sake of discussion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Just a question, this is for the new fiscal year, correct?
Correct.
And did we just not get these in the budget correct, or what, why are we transferring already?
I suppose because we don't have funds to pay the bills in the budget. And some of the bills, if you look at the bills list, we do have some bills that have carried over.
That was what I was
Correct.
wondering, did we have some that carried over? Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Judge.
Sure.
On the first transfer, the contingent appropriations for the sheriff, that $40,000, is that not the money we set aside to help the sheriff with some of the expenses that we took away from him? I think that was the money that Magistrate Graham wanted to put in one account instead of having it in separate accounts. Is that correct?
Yes, and I believe the charges made against that were for those intended purposes. I
So-
think the treasurer could speak to that.
It's transferring to health insurance, unemployment insurance, and workers' comp, and it certainly wasn't my interpretation that that's what that money was for. There are line items in the budget for those three things.
No, the health insurance actually similar to.
Those are last year's account numbers.
What do you mean?
The three accounts we're transferring into, the 01-5015, -2050, -2080, and -2090, those are numbers from last year's budget. They're not in this year's, but well, they're on it, but they're at zero balance.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but the numbers do exist. They can still be used. That's my understanding, correct?
Correct. That's for DLG.
And the issue is we don't have a way to allow the sheriff to pay the bill for the insurance unless we pay it on his behalf and get reimbursed. So that's something we're gonna have to tackle in the upcoming month.
Judge, did we anticipate, I understand these bills are for prior fiscal year 2020, correct?
You'll have to name them specifically and ask the treasurer which ones.
So health insurance, unemployment insurance, and workers' comp.
That's all for.
Those are for this year. right?
Fiscal for Anthem Health Insurance for July
It's for what year? I'm sorry.
2021.
Oh, it is for this fiscal year.
Mhm.
Okay.
We have line items for this fiscal year, do we not? They're different numbers.
Correct, we do have line items,
So why are we not using this year's accounts?
because those were the ones that most appropriately fit. And we had to take it out of the $40,000 that was set aside for those particular things. The county received a bill for the health insurance, not the sheriff. The sheriff has no way of paying it unless we reimburse it. Now, are you asking, did we anticipate that we were gonna have to ask for reimbursement? No. But that's just something we're gonna have to figure out how to deal with.
So the bill came, there was nothing in the line item, so we're just transferring from contingent appropriation sheriff to those line items to pay those bills, and then we can always transfer back or do whatever we like.
Correct.
Later, okay, I follow. Now, the second workers' comp, there are two transfers to workers' comp, treasurer. The second one is for $4,350. Is that also 2021, or is that a, hold
Also
on?
2021. The bill was,
You just extinguished the $40,000 out of the one line item and had to get from a different line item. I follow, okay.
I got you.
Thank you.
He didn't ask.
Yeah, it would have been 35,000 some odd dollars, looks like, so, yeah, okay, thank you. I have nothing further, Judge.
Judge, bear with me for a minute because I'm not following you.
Okay.
Why are we not using the health insurance, unemployment insurance, and workers' comp accounts in the current budget that we're in now?
We are using the health insurance account. We're paying from our health insurance account.
It's the
for
wrong
sheriff.
account number. It's last year's account number.
We are paying from the county's account. I can't verify the account number without looking at it and comparing to Travis.
You wanna see
but
it?
I assume the treasurer could
You wanna see it?
address that.
I've
Sure,
got it.
Sure.
I mean, if you don't
wanna bring
believe
it
me,
to
but it's the wrong account numbers. It's last year's account numbers when we have this year's account numbers with funds in them that are adequate to pay those bills, and you wouldn't have to do the transfer.
But what were those account numbers? Were those sheriff line items? Or are those fiscal court line items?
That's a good question. I thought they were sheriff line items. I'm pretty sure they are, but I'm not certain of that.
Okay,
I can give you the account numbers if you want to ask the treasurer.
okay.
The health insurance is a 9400-2050.
that's county.
So that's not the sheriff? That's what I'm getting at. Okay, all right. Then that answers the other two as well. then.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay, all those in favor, respond by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Let me find my agenda. Item number 13, consider approval of the bills list.
Which one?
First one. Bills list starting with, I guess mine is stapled backwards, but I believe starting with animal shelter 015205-5780, AT&T Internet in the amount of $50.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
Any discussion?
couple of questions.
Sure.
There are two sanitizing fees in here, one for the annex, one for the courthouse. Those one time or those monthly, how should we expect to see those going forward?
Janet, how often does he do the sanit? Is that about once a month or?
Well, he does it twice a week.
Oh, twice a week.
So this-
Wow.
Yeah, but we're getting it reimbursed. We have to pay it, but we're gonna go through the CARES Act to get it reimbursed.
Okay, thank you.
It'll come from that.
Yep. That was my next question, Jen. Very good. Second question, I see inmate health care on the third page, 54,000 some odd dollars, almost 55. Is that last year's expense, this year's expense,
I believe it's a mix of the two.
a mix of the two? Okay, I'll just figure out, I'll get which is which later. Thank you.
It's probably pretty close to half and half.
Half. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
I have one. We didn't transfer any money to the jail. Did they not need it? Did they have adequate funds to pay these bills?
Treasurer Champ, they have adequate for payroll, is that correct?
For payroll, we have 102,000 in the current number there.
And then in regards to the other bills, is that covered in the transfer?
There is no transfer for the jail.
So are we gonna end up having to, I guess, correct that later in the month, or?
I can create it today.
Okay.
We only had $4 in there at the end of June, so
Yeah, I'm aware there's only
I
$4.
was
yeah.
concerned that we might not have the money in there to pay these bills. That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, I think we should, we probably need to estimate, and we can do it at this meeting or the next one according to how we pay the bills, but I guess they have their own fund now, so we need to transfer into the checking account. So we need to do that now, yeah.
If we don't, it's gonna be negative.
What you already did was transfer.
We did
cash to bank
100,000.
accounts.
They have, and we don't know how much payroll.
We left $4.80
so
in the jail fund at the end of June.
It was 104,000
Was it
now.
in the
We
20?
transferred 100,000.
But that's the 2020, right?
Yes, sir.
The 2021 is flush now, and that line item for payroll will have a lot of money.
But we
Where
have,
am I missing the
we have
point?
separate bank accounts now. It has its own bank account.
Correct.
That's the reason why we transferred the money at the end of the last meeting, was so there would be 100,000 in that account. What I'm saying is, I don't believe we have transferred any more money other than that 100,000. Is that correct?
Well, that 100,000 only became subject to charge as of July 1, so we've not had any meeting to spend the money from July 1 to now. Which
Yeah,
seemed
that's
there's
right.
money there. And I understood
So there is
Travis's
money in
questions
it.
to be about the accounting and not necessarily the cash.
I thought it was about the cash.
Yeah, the jail fund balance, because it's its own account now, and if we pay these bills, then that,
And
I'm
I
just
think-
asking, is there money there to
I
pay
think
the
what
bills?
he's saying is there's $100,000, or 100, maybe, is there 100, there's $100,000 in that account, and we need to pay X amount of bills. Is that amount of bills more than $100,000?
Yeah, the amount of
Is the
bills is
question
only
he's
100,
asking.
it's 101,000, the amount of bills is $101,302.
Plus the additional bills.
Yeah, the next bills list has 62,000.
Yeah.
Correct. Now, the
So
next
what-
one. the
And there's a
next one's
payroll
gonna
this
have
week,
issues
too.
Right now.
So what Travis is asking is, should we go ahead and make a transfer, a cash transfer, into the jail checking account to cover these bills, and what amount should it be in, I suppose?
I think that doesn't need to be done now. But I don't wanna bounce checks either.
Well, I don't think we can pay the bills if there's not,
Right, I think
yeah, I
that,
think we would either have to table the bills or make a transfer.
We have a payroll this week also, correct?
Yeah, and that's what the $100,000 is to cover, is the payroll, which it should. I think the most recent payrolls that I've seen have been in the $40,000
Yeah, or a
ballpark.
little less, I agree with you.
Yeah, so,
I think we have to pay our bills, but I think we also have to make sure there's money in the account to do it, so.
So do you think we need to transfer money, or do you just?
I don't know.
have any
Nobody's
idea?
giving me the jail fund balance.
I didn't see it either. I couldn't tell how much.
I only know what it was at the end of June, and I do know we approved the transfer of the 100,000, but I hadn't seen that on paper anywhere.
what is the cash balance in the jail checking account?
110,000.
110,000.
Even?
I could go upstairs and check, but it was around 110,000 this morning.
even though we're not there yet, once we get to the second set of bills, I think we can easily not pay some of those bills and not, matter of fact, I think we can hold all of those bills till the next meeting on the jail line items, which are only, again, we're not there yet, so I don't want to discuss something we're not on the table, but contract agreement, cooler repairs, and then unemployment insurance, workers' comp insurance, and internet. I think any of those would hold 2 weeks till the next meeting, and hopefully some more checks come in, so. I think we'll be okay, my opinion, approving this set of bills, and then we'll discuss that on the next set of bills.
What is the total? Can you give me a rough estimate of the total of the jail amount on that set of bills, the first set?
This one, 101,000, almost 102.
Well, when you take 102 and you add payroll of 40 in, 110 is not gonna get there.
Correct.
I see, so that's correct, yeah, okay,
Yep.
I follow that now.
Go ahead and transfer 50 in.
Cheryl, That second bills list that you made for the bills that came in very recently, are any of those bills, the ones from the jail, do those need to be paid within, let's say, the next 21 days?
Well, the workers' comp bill is, that's in order to receive, 1% discount.
That needs to be paid by August 1st.
Judge, how about
correct?
I make a motion then to, and this is a question yet, but I make a motion to ask the county attorney to prepare an order to transfer $50,000 into the jail account.
Is that enough?
Maybe we make it 100. I mean, it's okay.
I'm more comfortable with 100.
I think 50 would be pretty close. but-
Yeah, let's just
Okay.
go ahead and do 100. We can approve all these
I make a
bills.
motion, Judge, that we transfer, we have the county attorney prepare an order to transfer $100,000 worth of funds into the jail account so we can continue to pay the bills.
Second.
Typically, those orders are prepared by the treasurer,
That'd be fine, the treasurer.
so we'll.
Greg just
accept
wants
that
a
as
record.
I just want the record.
Okay.
Are we gonna do that for the transfer out to the transferring?
Yeah, and Shay, I don't have line items. You guys will have to figure that out of what and into what, but I don't have them with me, but I'll be glad to work with you on that after the meeting.
So is your amendment to have the county attorney or the treasurer?
The treasurer.
Treasurer, I'm sorry.
That's right.
Michelle.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the bills list amended to include a transfer of $100,000 into the jail fund checking account.
I seconded.
Seconded by Magistrate Thompson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Item number 14, a note in your minutes, pay increases authorized
You
by
got the
the.
second
got
bills
another-
list, Judge.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Another
missed-
bills list.
Can you hand me that one? I don't have it in my packet.
Well, mine was-
It was laid on the table this morning.
Okay. I have the early packet.
I didn't have one. There's additional.
Yeah, just pass that over here for me, so I can read the heading. Okay. This is Bill's list, starting with Animal Shelter, 15205-3850 to Woodstock for veterinary services in the amount of $2,436.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that motion carries. Item number 14, now, noted minutes, pay increases authorized by the CCFC Administrative Code, Compensation Plan Number 6, for the Clark County Fiscal Court employees and the Clark County Attorney's employees, beginning with the first payroll in July. Do I have a motion?
Looking, so moved, Judge.
Is there a second?
Do we need a vote since it's a note of the
It's just a note in the
No,
minutes.
it's just a note in the minutes,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
sorry.
right, yeah.
Do we have a list of the employees and those raises?
They're on the back of the bills list, Magistrate
It's on the
Thompson.
back of the bills list.
Okay.
Took me a minute, Rob.
Didn't me too, huh?
I'm sorry.
Needs to be separate.
I'm sorry, yeah, it's totally a note in the minutes, that's fine.
Yeah, I see, okay, I did see that.
Item number 15, consider approval of an order to appoint Aaron Pelford to the Winchester-Clark County Planning Commission. Now do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Judge, actually, George Chaflant's term expired. It's not an unexpired term. As I read the previous records, it's not an unexpired term. George's term actually ended on June 30th, and this is just filling his term, not an unexpired term.
Let me check this order and see what your,
George served a 4-year term, and it ended, according to the records I had from previous, his term ended on June the 30th.
yeah, I agree with you, it ended. Are you saying there's something in here
Well,
that,
it says here unexpired term, and that wouldn't be the proper terminology.
oh, okay.
Well, it says he determined to resign the position.
Well, he didn't.
It's also, he resigned and it expired, both of,
Yeah,
yeah,
so unexpired needs to be changed to expired.
sure.
You can't resign an expired position, can you?
Well,
I think he just didn't choose to be reappointed, in my conversation with George. He's just going to be reappointed.
he sent me notification that he was resigning, so I don't know what the technicality is
No, I
on
don't
that,
either.
if it really matters that much, but, I'm fine with changing the word unexpired to expired, if that makes the court happy.
That's fine with me.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 16, consider approval of an order to reappoint William Doug Christopher to the Clark County Public Library Board.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Item number 17, consider approval of an order to jointly reappoint Leanna Comer to the Winchester-Clark County Recreational Tourist and Convention Commission. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Motion seconded by Magistrate Thompson?
No, go ahead.
Oh, no? Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
The order says appoint, the agenda says reappoint. So does the
The order should say reappoint. We'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
There's a blank on the order. I was just gonna ask what to fill in there.
Mm-hmm. Three-year term, apparently.
The term of Leanna Comer, is that what
Is
you're
that
asking
where it
about?
goes in there?
Yeah.
It's blank on mine.
Okay, Leanna Comer.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Judge, she's the one we appointed. The blank is for who we're filling the position from.
It was her.
She was, okay.
Yeah.
Reappoint.
All right, gotcha. Perfect.
Item number 18, consider approval of an order to jointly appoint Cassandra Riddle to the Winchester-Clark County Board of Adjustments.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item number 19, consider approval of an order to accept Kentucky Bank's tax credit transfer agreement to purchase historic preservation tax credits.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Item number 20, consider approval of an order to continue the temporary home incarceration program coordinator position. I guess I'll go ahead and ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, just, I would like to amend this because I think some of the wording is confusing. It was my intention for this to be a permanent appointment to the position. So if we could just strike temporary.
In all instances, strike the word temporary.
Correct.
So wherever it's temporary, they'll be stricken.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd motion, Judge, because I could tell you wanted to talk about that a bit, and I was gonna ask about the temporary, but also the salary. Is that, that's an increase for him, I suppose? Is that correct?
Yes, it is an increase.
Good.
Now, I will say, we budgeted $55,000 in the line item for salaries. Now, the thought on that is either, I don't know if he's going to be able to handle the amount of bracelets that we could potentially need this year. He may need to bring in some help. And I will say that if he is able to, save us money by bringing in, another 20, let's say, bracelets throughout the year, in the sake of fairness, we may actually want to come back and look at his salary again, because he would be saving the county quite a bit of money. That's just my 2 cents on it.
Mine are that he, and I think the jailer, see him in the back of the room, will agree that he's saving us a substantial amount of money now by doing the work that he's doing, and I wholeheartedly agree if he can continue at that pace and even increase, I would support paying him some more money at some point.
I would agree with that. I was gonna point out what we budgeted and either ask that we give it to him or that we allow him to have at least some part-time help to use the rest of that
I
money
think
up.
we're of the same
Yeah,
thought
sounds like
process.
it. I just
so.
want to back that up. I think he's doing an excellent job, and I spoke with him this week, and he said he had 50 people on. That's a lot of people for one person to keep up with 24/7.
Absolutely is. Outstanding job so far.
Any further discussion?
What's in the blank after created? I assume that's a date. I don't know why that's in there, but
I would think because it was originally written temporary, you're probably right, it was a date there.
Position which was created. Oh, that was probably intended to insert the date that position was created.
so that would be.
But I don't think that's necessary. Is that necessary, William? Let's just strike that blank. Any further discussion?
You striking, what part of that are you striking?
Just the blank. So the
Should-
position which was created, the blank and the
Should-
comma,
Should continue.
should be
So the blank-
continued with
just
an annual
strike the
salary of
blank, okay.
43,000. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Item number 21, consider approval of an order to increase the salaries of the road department supervisor and the animal shelter director. And I will say, in further looking into this last night, something that I hadn't taken into account was the accumulation of comp time already. Alan has over 100 hours accumulated. Addie has over 2,000, and that presents an issue, I think, with increasing the pay, because the pay is also going to increase all those accumulated hours whenever they're purchased out. So in some ways, that might be a bit of a unintended windfall, so to speak, when there've been thousands of hours banked up. Of course, we didn't know the procedure that was going on before we got here. Obviously KRS is supposed to set limits on how many hours can be brought in. We've changed it since then. We changed it in the administrative code, but we can't do anything about hours already earned. Those earned hours are already on the books. But it seems to me we may want to look into purchasing some of the hours. Maybe we need to assign, which we're allowed to do via the administrative code, just some slack time to burn some of those hours. So I think the best course may be to just postpone this motion. A little time to think about it, but that's just my thought.
Could we do them separately too, since we're going to postpone them?
That's
Probably could.
probably a thought as well, is to do them separately. Does KRS, and I can't remember, I was trying to think back through my mind, which is, nobody wants to see that. Does KRS have a maximum hours that a person can carry forward? I think it does, but I don't remember.
I don't know
230
about,
hours.
it's 240, 240,
I think that's right.
Hazardous duties 480, right?
right.
I think that's right.
As bad as I would hate to say it, should we not purchase at least down to that maximum number that we can carry, or have them to take time off or something of that nature?
That's what I just said, yeah, that's what I was
That's what
thinking.
he's
I-
thinking
I-
about.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know that that's where you were going with that, but I think that's something we should certainly consider.
Judge, can you give me those balances again? I heard them, but I missed them.
Of the total comp time hours?
Yeah.
Hold on one second, I've got them right here. 2,380,
Who's that for?
Addie, and Allen is 216.
260?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So the most central piece of the statute that you want to keep in mind is, as you suggested, Judge, is that if you give the raise now, deal with the comp time later, you've increased the cost of the comp time to your payroll responsibility. So I would recommend to the court that they deal with the comp time issue up front and then with the salary issue.
So is that something you think we can deal with today, or do you think it would make sense to postpone the motion? Or?
I've moved that we postpone it.
If you're buying out, it's something that you need to do today. If you're talking about potentially having your employees take all that comp time off in the future and not buy it out, then it actually has no fiscal impact. Then I think you could. So if you buy it out and give the raise today, that's a possibility. But if you're going to explore them taking the time off, I think you have to postpone it.
It sounds like a good opportunity to think on it, if nothing else. So we've got a motion to postpone from Magistrate Elkins. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, Judge, I would like to have this at least, and I don't know how we do it, some sort of thought as to how we accomplish this task of giving these increases before the next meeting or at the next meeting. I don't want to carry this on for months and months, because I mean, I think the increases are warranted, but certainly don't want to overburden the taxpayers by increasing our liability on the comp time as well. So I'd like to have a plan or something in place by the next meeting if we can.
Okay, I'll go over the options with the county attorney. We'll try to come up with a plan.
Thank you, Judge.
Just to echo that, Judge, but just a little different take on it. In principle, I'm in favor of raises for both these positions for a variety of reasons. And we can go into that when the time comes, but I think it is more appropriate to address the comp time issue and how we're going to resolve that. And I would just ask that, if you could present something to us, your recommendations and thoughts, since you're the supervisor for both these department heads. And I certainly would like to hear what or how we're going to resolve it. I mean, clearly, the mistake, of course, that our county's been making for years is we weren't adhering to KRS. And so now we've got ourselves in a hole with comp time to a pretty drastic extent for at least a few employees. And that's not really the fault of the employee. That's bad management practice, poor management, and not adhering to the law. So, unfortunately, I think it is appropriate to forego making any decision on this discussion until we see how we're going to deal with the comp time situation. So I'm in favor of postponing, Judge, for that reason.
Okay. Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. '22, magistrate comments. Joe Graham.
Yeah, I had a couple things. One, I wanted to express great appreciation for our police department and our sheriff's department. And when, these days it seems like they're being heavily abused, and just wanted to know I'm behind them and will be in the future, and just really appreciate what they do. Secondly, I'd like us to, I don't know if we could do something or pass something to guarantee that our people in our county can vote in their precinct when that time comes for our president. in the upcoming election.
That'll be up to the governor and Secretary of State.
Tell you what we can do, Joe, we can certainly formulate a resolution to that effect and submit it to the governor. Anything else?
Oh, that's it.
Okay. Travis,
I don't have anything, Judge, other than I'd like to say thank you for having us back in the courtroom.
you're welcome. Robert?
Were you able to check on the bid that we did last year for the outside of the courthouse, if we have to rebid that, or if we can contract that
I
out?
can't answer that for you yet, Robert, but I'll have it by the next meeting.
Because I would like to proceed with that. If we have to rebid it, I'd like to do that. If we don't, we can proceed with some of this maintenance work. I'll bring up Cook Avenue again. I've not heard anything on the status of the Cook Avenue complaint. I don't know where you stand with that.
William, you have anything on that?
Yes, we issued written letters to the, I think, 3 addresses on Cook Avenue. We made an in-person visit to one owner, albeit in Fayette County, about the Cook Avenue properties. Essentially, the only code that we have that's applicable right now is our maintenance code. You know, so we can do something about the appearance of everything but the structure. Now, the Kentucky statute, Chapter 65, will allow you to do something about the building as well, but you have to have an ordinance in place. We don't actually have an ordinance in place that we're aware of, but perhaps when the indexing is available and there's a book we can go to and look, there may be an ordinance that we can apply. The city is working on a joint ordinance and an appeal board, you know, to try to facilitate this work as well. So a lot of moving pieces where those Cook Avenue properties are concerned, but in all likelihood, the most we can address right now is the overgrowth of weeds and so forth in the yards.
Okay.
And just finally, just a quick comment about the timeliness of the receipt of the agenda. Didn't get it till Monday afternoon late. That doesn't allow us much time to do our due diligence on reviewing the paperwork. And I know Friday was a holiday, but it comes every year at the same time. So if we could try to expedite these agendas in a timely manner, I would certainly appreciate it. That's all I have.
Thank you, Robert.
A couple of things, Judge. First of all, I know I spoke with you earlier this week about and have spoken with you before about the possibility of finalizing our audio-visual so that we could stream these meetings live. I'm very grateful and thankful that we're back in the courtroom. Wish it could happen earlier, but I'm glad we're here now. I think the public appreciates it and being able to come and do public comment.
I can answer that if you want me to.
Sure.
We've had people in to run the wire. Now, we've been informed that we need to increase our bandwidth, which we're working on right now. We don't have enough bandwidth to stream it. So that's kind of why, you know, I told you we tried for months and months, knocking our head against the wall to stream it. It just, we didn't have enough bandwidth. So we're going to increase the bandwidth, and hopefully that will cure the issue, and we'll be able to stream as soon as they can get out here and hook it up.
I think we saw, Judge, how many people were watching, you know, the Zoom meetings that we were not only putting on Zoom, but putting on, streaming to Facebook via Bluegrass Ads Facebook page, and most of us shared it to our pages. So I think people really appreciated that. I think people will probably continue watching that way. I've gotten, you know, really positive feedback, and some of the other folks on this court may have as well. And I just think it's good public policy. Second thing I wanted to address, Judge, is when Ms. Bridges, who spoke before the court earlier today, that's been an issue that I've mentioned in this court before, is the Greater Clark Foundation. And as you go forward and speak with her and look at this yourself, I can only add what is my understanding, and I may not be correct, but my understanding is that when the hospital was sold to Life Point several years ago, and I think it was about probably 10, 11 years ago, maybe longer, you know, because the hospital operated as a nonprofit corporation, state law dictated that those proceeds pass to another nonprofit, a foundation. So that is how there came to be a Greater Clark Foundation. Now, They do have a board of directors. It is on the Secretary of State's website because they're incorporated as a nonprofit entity. So I've looked at it myself when questions have arisen about the Greater Clark Foundation. They do have a board. They rotate their chairperson. I'm not sure who's chairing it now. All of those board members, as far as I know, live in Clark County, and many of them are from Clark County, and they've lived here for many years. So I will say that they're very fine people, the ones that I know on there. But to Ms. Bridges' point, I think the more important question, just from a public policy standpoint, I have heard many complaints from people in the community about going to the Greater Clark Foundation or their CEO, making requests for funding, making requests for assistance, and essentially not getting any help or little if any help. And I think there has been a growing frustration among a lot of people in this county. It isn't governmental funds in the way that it's, the county's money or the city's money or the state's money. But there is a duty under the statute. There's a moral obligation. That was a community hospital. It was a very lucrative deal for the foundation. I'm glad that it happened. I'm not convinced that this community has benefited from it like it should. And my understanding is the endowment at some point was in the $40 to $45 million range. It may be down or lower than that now with the market fluctuations. I'm sure it's subject to ups and downs in the stock market. But I would encourage Ms. Bridges and you as well, Judge, and anybody else that's interested, to talk to these local board members. I mean, they're not elected officials. They're not appointed by any government agency, but they're members of this community. And they are overseeing tens of millions of dollars. And this is at a time, Judge, when both the county and city both are scrambling just to make sure we've got operating capital to keep the basic functions of local government going. Now, I'm not suggesting that the Greater Clark Foundation should step in and start paying for everything. I mean, that's not how foundations work. But they are obligated under IRS regulations and federal law to expend a certain percentage of that money every single year. Foundations are required to do that. So people need to be mindful of that. I've been very frustrated. I mean, that they have sponsored some activities and I think sent some people to Washington for training and things of that nature, and organizing things about, racial problems and so forth. And I'm not saying those are good or bad, but I don't believe they have been as impactful in Clark County as they could have been the last 10 years or so. I hope going forward that will change. And I hope people, including our people that are involved with local nonprofits, and some of whom are here today, that they start agitating for more change, Judge. And I would encourage you to do that too, and Mayor Bertner as well, because this is a vast amount of money. $40 million in Cincinnati or Louisville or Chicago wouldn't get you very far, wouldn't pay for much. But in a community this size, that is phenomenal. We are very fortunate to have that. So I just wanted to put that out there, Judge, and I hope that Ms. Bridges gets some of the answers to her questions. But it's been something I've been disturbed by for a few years now. So that's all I say.
Thank you. Magistrate Elkins?
A couple of things, Judge. It's, I guess you know better than any, because you always go last. But going last, you find out that a lot of people already touched on what you were going to talk about, and I think Magistrate Davis just articulated a lot of my thoughts perfectly. Agree with what Magistrate Graham said about let's try to vote in our own precinct, or at least as close as we can when it comes to voting for our president in the November election, or our congressman or our senator. Will all be on the ballot. I'd like to make that as easy for the public as we can. I had a couple of complaints on properties in Wayland Heights. I wonder if we have any progress, or I was out there yesterday and didn't see that anything couldn't tell anything had been done to correct those issues.
I went out and viewed those personally and forwarded it to the county attorney investigator. I assume it's in the process.
Well, I see Ken in and out of the office, but, you know, with literally working on a couple of hundred things a year, I don't know what
Okay.
he's doing every minute, but, if you.
I assume it's in the process. Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind, Judge, check with him, or I will one, and
Okay.
I'll certainly reach out to him as well and see where that stands. And one thing I'd like to say about, I talked to Janet a bit about streaming these meetings, and I look forward to doing that. I wish we could have done it years ago. I'm glad that we're going to now, and I appreciate the efforts that Janet and you and others have taken to make that happen, because I think it's needed. It is another means of transparency for this court. One thing that I noticed, you know, where people could see it before, a lot of times they look at what we're doing and they think that we're angry at each other or you know, bickering amongst ourselves, and that's not what we do. I mean, just like today when we were going over the bills and the transfers, we were just trying to make sure what we do, these magistrates, and I know all the magistrates here, just want to do it right. We just want to do what's right for the county, for the taxpayers. I don't think any one of us are up here to make sure that the sheriff can't patrol 24 hours a day. I know that there are a group of what I call pot stirrers that like to get on Facebook and say we're defunding the police and we're defunding the jail. Those people have a different agenda. You just can't pay attention to those folks, because there's never a desire of any of these magistrates to defund the sheriff's department or the police department. We appreciate what the sheriff does. We appreciate what the jail does. We just can't throw money at those problems without at least some sort of checks and balances, or not problems, but those issues and departments. Without some sort of check and balance, that we know what we're doing. So, you know, I ask people, don't buy into a lot of what you read on Facebook, because it's a lot of pot stirrers that have different agendas that they're not honest. I mean, for the most part, they're just not honest people. So I appreciate being able to view these things, to stream these meetings, and I'm glad we're going to do it so people can form those opinions for themselves. And I want to thank you guys for your work on that. That's all I have, Judge.
Thank you. A few items, just one thing that came to my mind since I've been sitting here. I think we should take a quick look at the road department bills and make sure we don't need to do a transfer into that in excess of the $100,000 that we already transferred. I don't think that we would. I don't think payroll would get anywhere close to enough to go over that, but I just wanted, since we have separate bank accounts now, wanted to make sure everybody was aware and had a chance to look. I have a question about grass ordinances, William. You mentioned grass when you were talking a minute ago. I've been receiving lots and lots and lots of calls about high grass in the county. And, you know, my general mode of operation is to go look and forward it to the county attorney investigator. But I'm really not sure with, you know, hay and things like that, what the ordinance is on that. Could you help explain that?
The statute doesn't permit the local government to adopt any ordinance affecting unincorporated areas. So it has to be an incorporated area before we can have a maintenance code, and then the maintenance code applies. So what we do many times is we look at the zoning map, not being real sure what unincorporated is in every circumstance. And if it's a residential area, you know, or zoned other than agriculture, you know, we think that the maintenance code applies. What I do a lot, to your point, I get a lot of calls and discussions with people too about property maintenance, is I like for people to send us an email, so we have some sort of working list, so we don't have, there's no intake form floating around town, or there's no bulletin board that you can go to. But if you'll send an email to the office or call, you know, we'll do the best we can look into it. And you know, that's essentially what Ken Bradley does, 100 hours a month, is look at grass and shrubbery and broke down cars and work vehicles and residential neighborhoods, you know, so. A lot of it going on, we'll take on every piece of it we can get, so.
A question I have about those complaints, because, you know, I've read some of them, and obviously if you were in a court of law, you'd have to notify the address where it was. Do we allow for vagueness? I can specifically think of one complaint that I've looked at where someone says his neighbor has tall grass. Doesn't say who the neighbor is, doesn't say the address, says his address. Is that something that the investigator would take upon himself, or is that something that we should say, hey, you've got to fill out this form a little better before we can look into it?
Well, if you want a good answer, you know, we have to have a great question. If they're asking us to look at any address that, not that this occurred in Wayland Heights, but in Wayland Heights, we may not come back with any better answer. But if you say, look at 219 Wayland Heights, and then we know exactly what's being asked of us. We can give a very specific answer. So I think getting the answer begins with asking the question.
Correct. And you also, I know you probably feel like I'm putting you on the spot. I just thought of a lot of stuff when you were talking earlier. The appeals board, the administrative board that you were talking about, the joint ordinance with the city. If we have, and I know that they're probably going to approve something first and send it to us, but I think that we should probably look into some sort of due process for ordinance complaints. Anytime that we end up charging people fees, because I don't really know that we have a great due process set up here. And you know, if you go, let's say you're in Lexington, they'll have a board set up to review a parking ticket. And so, you know, when you're taking somebody's property, I think maybe if we could incorporate that appeals board into our ordinance process some way, it might be a good thing, just something to think about.
Well, the statute requires that you have a hearing, an opportunity, a hearing board, anytime that you use Chapter 65 for, you know, addressing nuisance, maintenance code type issues. That's a part of that ordinance that the city is working on. And they, maybe somebody said, well, why is the city working on it? Well, they've already begun work on it. They've already drafted in large part what their thoughts are, not any real likelihood that there'd be any major disagreement. No use in committing two budgets to that work. But so they've done much of that work, and they've also compiled significantly a joint maintenance code, which to your point about vagueness will perhaps not just say high grass, but say that high grass is defined as grass over 10 inches tall. So I think that there's progress in that direction, although it may not be present in the room yet. But I think that the city and county are moving that direction together.
Okay. And just so you guys know, another thing that the city is working on, and I think we've actually made some appointments to a joint board to review the Parks and Rec ordinance. Now, one thing that, you know, we've had a few groups who've been, you know, fairly active, and I think maybe we need to, I've already sent an email to the mayor's office. I'll contact him again one-on-one just to check and see, but there is a particular part of KRS that it appears our ordinance for Parks and Rec is just totally in violation of, regarding being able to possess a firearm. And the county attorney has reviewed that, and he agrees, and that may be something we need to act on first. If these boards and these committees take a long time to get action, is my point. And sometimes I think it's just better if we just go ahead and do something. So, you know, I'm fairly passionate about the Second Amendment, and I would like to go ahead and wipe that off perhaps. So I think maybe that's something we need to talk about doing in the near future. That's all my ordinance talk, I think. Since it was brought up today, I'm just going to see if anyone has any interest in, when we have discussion such as magistrate comments and motions are made, I think that it should be our position that an order be written to reflect those motions. It's better for record keeping. It's better for the public to find things. And so I'm going to make a motion that we reflect any motion made that is not on the agenda by order. Does anyone want to second that?
Or resolution, I guess, or.
Yeah,
All right, just one comment is the.
sure.
I thought we voted on our agenda so that that wouldn't happen, that there would be no surprise motion.
Well, magistrate comments is where we've kind of gotten off track with that. We've allowed people to make motions during magistrate comments or motions related to things on the approved agenda.
Because it's, I'm sorry, Joe, go
Well, I
ahead.
was just gonna say, I'm just wondering why we can't put them off till the next meeting and just have no motions.
I'm not necessarily opposed to that either, but that would mean when somebody comes, and this actually butts into another issue that we oftentimes have. So in some ways, maybe it's a discussion we could have real quick. Very often, at the last second, somebody from the city, somebody from Parks and Rec, or, you know, maybe some bill, something comes up at the last second and totally throws us off the track so far as what's going to be on the agenda, what's going to be on the bills list, what's going to be on the transfer order. And in speaking with Keiko and several other county judges, typically, in most places, they allow for flexibility. Now, I know it frustrates people when we don't have 5, 6, 7 days in advance to review things, even if we've just had a meeting 2 days before. But at some point, and as long as we're silent on it, we're going to keep on doing what we can to make sure there's work to be done at a meeting. So these things come up at the last second. If we don't allow them to be addressed in magistrate comments, then sometimes they won't get addressed until the next meeting, like you said, and maybe it's something important. So that's the only thought I have on that.
Now, I would add to that, Magistrate Graham, that I think if I remember correctly, and I did go back and view it, Mr. Lewis even requested that we vote on that so he could take that back to his board.
Yeah, we had no way of knowing
Right.
that was, yeah,
Well,
that
I'm
was
not
totally
talking
spur
about
of the
that
moment.
specific
Yeah,
thing.
that is a good example. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So I would say, because it is not, and I don't like to do it, but I've had to do it a time or two myself during magistrate comments. You know, it could be even to the point, and I'm not saying it has happened, because it hasn't to me, but it could be the judge doesn't want to put something on the agenda that a magistrate wants to be brought before the court, so that would be his place to do that. But because it's not the, I guess, the most transparent means of conducting court, to make a motion that isn't on the agenda, I would second the motion to memorialize in writing some means or mechanism to memorialize in writing any motions made during court that aren't on the agenda or don't have written record in front of us. So I would second that motion, yes.
Any further discussion?
Just to help make that even more transparent. That's the reason I think that's probably a good reason to do that, because anybody who follows me knows that I preach transparency, and I want everybody to know what this body does at all times, and so I would support that.
And just as a side note, you know, and Magistrate Davis could probably speak to this, I don't know if he wants to or not. Compared to the property records and other things that are fairly easy to research in the clerk's office, I mean, digging through paper books of minutes is difficult. So, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, that motion carries. And will be reflected by an order. See, what else do I have here? Okay, I just want you all to note that since the Treasurer's Committee, we've had one meeting. We're working together on a job description we hope to get out ASAP to the newspaper as well as to the internet, a couple search sites. That brings to mind the thought that we're going to have to probably have a special meeting at some point this month to settle books and maybe to appoint an interim treasurer. So that's something I want you all to keep in mind. I don't want anybody to feel like they're caught off guard. Typically, I try to come close to parroting the meeting time, You know, if I can find a 6 o'clock, 6:30 at night, 9 o'clock, 9:30 in the morning, something like that, even on a Monday or a Wednesday, that's what I'm going to try to do, because I figure you all have already got your schedule somewhat acclimated to that. So just make a note that we may have something on that. And with that being said, I think that's, oh, I did want to say one more thing, actually. Just in reviewing our checking account reconciliation, if you look at the end of the year, we ended up with almost $4 million. The general fund has roughly $1.5 million. The road fund has $1 million. The jail fund, after we transferred a few $100,000, has $4.80. LGA $140,000. ABC $30,000. And our special project fund, which we actually transferred out of the general fund like we did with the jail to put more money in that, $1.2 million. So it's roughly $4 million. I think we did a pretty good job last year, and this year may be challenging. We all know that, but we've tried to prepare for that. So hopefully we'll be able to stay the course in this upcoming year. And now I would like to turn the floor over to our Fire Chief Barnes.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to address the court. I've always considered it an honor to address this body, and I've always had a lot of respect for this body because of what it represents, which is the people of Clark County. I've served the people of Clark County for 21 years, and sitting home at night for the last 4 months because everything's closed, it gives you a lot of time to think. And I've decided it's best for me and my family to retire. I'll be retiring effective July 31st, 2020. We've accomplished a lot working with the 2 fiscal courts. With the help of the fiscal court, we put a new brush truck in service. We've got a new truck for the fire chief and for administrative use. We have a new engine and a new tanker on order that should be around here around Christmas. We replaced a 40-year-old roof on Station 1. We've increased salaries across the board. Starting pay has increased over $2 an hour. We went from 6 months ago not being able to get applicants, and now we have a stack of applications at the station. We're just waiting on some additions to the admin code so we can go ahead and hire and promote. I would have liked to have completed some of these personnel actions before I retired, but I also feel it's important to plant trees under whose shade you'll never rest. I'd like to thank the magistrates, all the magistrates I've worked with over the years, Judge Pace, Judge Branham, and the judge's staff. All the judge's staff that I've worked with have been incredibly helpful. The judge's office staff and the financial staff both. I've enjoyed working with you all. I'd like to thank the people of the county for their trust and support. I'd like to thank my guys. I will put them up against any fireman anywhere when the bell goes off. Finally, I'd like to thank my family for their love and their support and their patience. And I think they've earned the right to have me around and not have to worry about me all the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Barnes. So, noting that, I think we probably also need to create a committee to search for a fire chief. Logically, I think we should incorporate the fire committee into that process, that being Magistrate Elkins and Constantopoulos, and myself and the citizen member. If everyone agrees with that, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Chief Barnes, as a personal note, I mean, most people may not know this, but we've known each other since 3rd grade. We were at Fannie Bush in I guess you would call it a pilot program together, and it's been a long road with the chief, and I've really enjoyed working with him, and he's a great guy, and we're going to miss him. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Yes, sir.